Okay, hello, welcome. This is lesson one. I'm gonna try and keep it short and simple today because I'm trying to get a hang of this technology that I've never attempted to use before. But I digress. Let's get right into it. So let me just get everything set up here. So hold on. As I was thinking about how I want to go about this, I thought that, as I mentioned in the introduction, I'm gonna kind of go about this in segments, and as I kind of see where this goes, I'll figure out how I'm gonna carry out with it. But what I want to start with is fundamentals. Just start with something simple to integrate both you and I into this new experience. So, let me just make that visible. There we go. All right. It's working. I'm excited. Okay. So, for our fundamentals, what does this exactly mean? Well, by fundamentals, I think what I'm trying to get at is what makes jazz jazz, and what makes you a jazz musician, and what are the different types of jazz musicians, and depending on who you are, what you play, how you feel, what does that mean your role is going to be? So, here's our first slide today, and we're going to play a little game, and then we'll do something else, and then we'll conclude. Simple, very, very simple. So, through the beginning of this series, we're going to be using the song Maiden Voyage, because that's what we're playing in jazz band right now. That's what we're going to be doing, and that's what we're going to be using as a resource to help us learn and continue our understanding. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play Maiden Voyage, what we have as the song, and then I'm going to play for you with nothing else, just by itself, the backing track, and we're going to play a game here. What I've done is I've listed some instruments, just anything that came to the top of my head, and we're going to listen to the backing track, and I want all of you listening to this video to think in your head, what instruments can I hear? What is the most prevalent? So let me just play the song first, just so we all kind of are on the same page, and then we'll get into the backing track. Wrong. Is this right? Alright, so I'm just gonna pause real quick. Even right now, I know we're not exactly at the assignment that I instructed, but I want you to think about what stands out to me more than anything else. I hear many different instruments, but what can I consider the bones of what's happening right now? So now let's listen to the rest of it, and then we'll play the backing track and go further with that. Da 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 da. It's a good song, guys. You know, as we're listening to this, what's happening musically might seem a little complex, but this is going to be for later lessons. All right. Let's let this play out a little more. All right, no, it's good. So, that was the song itself. That's what we've gotten through so far, at least at this point in the year. Maybe if you're listening to this in the future, we would have gotten further. But so that itself is the song, and maybe some things stood out to you. Maybe the melody stood out to you. Maybe the some of the instruments in the back stood out to you. And those instruments in the back are really what I kind of want to get at. Let's listen to the backing track for just a couple seconds. And I want you to think, what instruments do you hear? All right, so I know the melody came in there, but playing that's what the backing track for improv would have been, and that's kind of those are there's about almost four fundamental instruments in there. In this case, it's actually three, but there could be four fundamental instruments that really kind of build up the behind of a song. And what those are the drums. I have that at the top of the list here. We've got the bass, and we've got the keyboard. And the reason I said four is because sometimes you also have the guitar. But what matters is that there's drums, because drums keep the beat. Bass, because bass kind of, they really are the skeletal system of any jazz piece. And I know there's a lot of interesting jazz out there, but as learners, when we want to really just kind of get into it, it's important to know that the bass is just the skeletal system of jazz. And the piano and keyboard, we're going to call those kind of the muscular system. Yeah, the muscular system of jazz. Whereas the drums would be the circulatory system. Drums keep everything moving. They keep it alive, you know? The bass, that's what kind of builds up it's the structure. And the piano, the chords, or it could also be the guitar, because they both serve the same function. That's the muscular system. So now, given that, we have those three fundamental things. But when we were listening to the song earlier, we heard many, many instruments perform a melody and counter melodies and harmonies over just this very, very easy fundamental thing that is some instruments playing together that build the structure of a jazz piece. So, what if you aren't one of those instruments? Say you're not a drummer. Say you're not a bass player. Say you don't play the keyboard, you don't play the guitar. Say you're like me. Say you're a trumpet player, right? Well, what does that make you? That makes you special, first of all. Everyone's special, but it also makes you one very important, because you play the melody. You're the skin on all that meat and bones. You're what gives it life. You're what gives it image. And that's what's important. Knowing what your role is in the band. If I do this, what do I do? What am I really doing? If I'm playing the trumpet, am I really the most important player? Maybe not. Maybe yes. Depends on the jazz piece. But in this case, in the case of most beginner or even more advanced jazz pieces that all are kind of in the same time period of, really this is looking at the 20th century jazz, different instruments have different set functions, and it's important to know that, because if you stick by those functions, then you're promising a successful future as a jazz musician. Anyway, I want to stop there for the first lesson, because this is kind of getting long. It's already 10 minutes by now. This is just kind of, our introduction into the fundamentals of jazz. And we're going to take this further, right? Knowing what you actually mean to the band is the first step. It's the most important part. And what I plan to do in the next episode of this podcast kind of learning experience is I want to I want to look at some other more famous jazz musicians and look at their histories, because I don't just want to make this about making yourself a better jazz musician. I want to make this an entire experience where we focus on more than just ourselves, but also focus on the people who have created this for all of us. I sincerely hope that you've enjoyed learning with me today. I am Michael Rentz, and I am your jazz teacher in this YouTube series. Goodbye.